just a number, but OKC Thunder struck the Pels last night in Game 2. And he's young, but wise in his fashion. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, I need that coat ASAP. They're looking to take a 2-0 series lead here against the Pels. Chet Holmgren was taking care of business in the first, knocking down 3 threes, shooting a perfect 5 for 5 from the field for 15 points. He's a first rookie with that 100% field goal in a playoff quarter in the last 25 years. We're going to take it to the second. Thunder still leading 43-27. Aaron Wiggins drives. CJ McCollum on the floor. The fancy handle. Dishes to Jalen Williams. Drives and gives it back to Wiggins for the layup. The Thunder bench just on fire. They're loving it, and they're leading 58-45. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander steps back. He's fashionable on the court, too. Buries the three. That's one of 10 made three-pointers in the first half for the Thunder. OKC had 10 threes in all of Game 1. They were leading 63-50 at the half. SGA here in the third, keeping the trend with the threes. Thunder lead by 21. They were up by 16, 20 seconds to go in the third. SGA drives, lays it up and in. 33 points for him on the game. That's a career high in playoffs for SGA. Cason Wallace gets the ball in corner, pumps, drives, finds Williams. Thunder win easily, 124-92. David?
Yeah, Christina, we got Tim Legler here to talk about it. I'm not going to call you old legs, but I do want to talk about the young legs of the Thunder because they're young and they're really good. They're the 1 seed. What have you seen so far, just through a couple games of the playoffs, that make you think, okay, maybe OKC can do some things here?
Well, I think, David, I saw last night a lot of the same things I watched all season, which is the connection between their starters. It's really special. I think it's the second best we have in this league besides the Denver Nuggets with the core continuity. And it's built around the star offensive talent of Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, but everybody else stays in their lane. I know it's a young team, but they play with a greater maturity level than their age would indicate. And they have a second player that's an emerging star in Jalen Williams. So they've got that second guy, and then everybody else does what they're asked to do at a really high level. If they have one area of concern, they are a little bit small up front. They run into some of those bigger front lines. It could be a little bit of a problem on the glass or defending the post, which is why I think a matchup with Denver down the road could be problematic. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. Right now, you saw last night a team that can hum at that level, and when they play that way offensively, there are very few teams in this league that can slow them down because their movement, the player and ball movement on the offensive end of the floor is really special, and New Orleans got a taste of it last night.
Fun to watch. Now they're up 2-0 as the series swings to New Orleans. Meanwhile, legs in Boston, the Heat, they just steal one last night, and they do it over and over again. Erik Spoelstra, a great coach. He's undermanned. He's missing a couple guys, and yet they come away with a win against Boston. What stood out to you about that performance last night?
Well, I've often said if you wanted to give me one coach to coach any group of guys that you wanted to throw together, including down at the health club later this afternoon, I'm taking Erik Spoelstra as the guy I want to coach that game. And you saw it why last night. Just the fact that he gets them to believe based on their situation. You're playing a team that won 64 games. You're on the road. You don't have Jimmy Butler, and yet you come out and you play with this level of confidence and just certainty with the way they played offensively. Look, Boston contributed to it, but I'm not going to chalk this as much up to the Boston Celtics as I am to the Heat. This is an outrageous shooting performance. These are guys stepping into shots with confidence. They made every extra pass in every situation that they had to get a clean look. And then Tyler Hero, to me, was the guy that was just incredible last night because this is a team that doesn't typically play with a traditional point guard. Tyler Hero is more of a combo guard, but he played like a point guard last night. 14 assists. He made 6 threes himself, David. He assisted on 10 others. So that's 48 points from the three-point line alone that Tyler Hero accounted for. I thought his ball handling, his decision-making, everything was exceptional last night. And the Miami Heat came in there, and they got a game they had to have to make this an interesting series, which it certainly is now that we're changing venues. And
make no mistake, there's a ton of pressure on Boston. They have not won it all with this great core of theirs, and now the pressure ramps up as we go to Miami, Game 3 on Saturday. Legs giving us some insight.
Game 2, leveling this series at 1 game apiece in the 1-8 series. in the Eastern Conference. The Celtics were favored by 14.5 coming in. Miami was as high as plus 750 on the money line. Hope you put some shekels down on the Heat for this game, because holy moly, upset city in Boston tonight. Miami 111, Boston Celtics 101. And for more on Game 2 between the Heat and C's, we say hello to CBS Sports national columnist Bill Ryder, and also from CBS Sports, Brad Botkin joining us on the line as well. Simple question: how did Miami do this?
So you know what? We've cracked the code. I have a simple recipe, guys, for how you beat the Boston Celtics. It's easy. You take 43 three-point shots. You make 54% of your shots. No problem. I mean, that's the answer. Spoelstra and company did a great job limiting the Heat's three-point opportunities, though the Heat still made a bunch of them, not quite 40%. But over the course of the year, Miami took about 42.5 three-point shots per game. That's the most in the NBA, and they made the second highest percentage of anybody. They took a lot fewer in this game than they do on average. That was clearly by design. The Heat made that hard on them. But Brad, Russ, if you make 54% of your shots and you shoot a franchise high in three-point shots in the playoffs, you're going to win the basketball game.
Bill's right. It is a simple formula if you can shoot the basketball like this. I will say I was a bit concerned. At the end of three quarters, they were outscoring the Celtics, the Heat that is, by 27 points to the three-point line, and they only had a 6-point lead. So I was thinking in my pessimistic mind, how much better can they shoot from three-point land? I figured Boston would get going, but give the Miami Heat credit. Yes, they shot the lights out. But if there is something that can be concerned about with this Boston team, it is in a game where they don't have everything firing from three-point land, and they have to come down into the crucial fourth quarter minutes. Can they get it done then? And to me, that's what Miami proved, because there was a couple of junctures of that fourth quarter that even as well as Miami was shooting the basketball, Boston was there with momentum, crowd into it, getting it to within a couple possessions. A lesser team could have folded, a less tough team. Miami has done what they do. They have made this thing a series. They have stolen home court advantage, and I don't care what Boston says. There is some legitimate pressure on them now, given the history of this team, way they folded last year in the conference finals against an 8 seed. Boston is feeling this. I don't care what anybody tells you.
Well, not only that, Boston lost a Game 7 on their home floor to this team. It's funny, you mentioned the end of the third quarter. We were talking about it at halftime.
Right.
That Miami did everything right, and they were losing in the game. So what did Miami do even better in the second half? Because outside of just dropping 23 threes, they obviously did other stuff too. Or do you think Boston, did they choke, finding themselves behind late in the game?
I'm with Brad on this. The series shifts now. And I think Brad made the most important point that we've had yet, which is there is real pressure on the Boston Celtics. And we talked at the start of the game, as dominant as this Celtics team has been this year, and they've been historically great, third best net rating of all time, in those rare moments where there's really close games, within 5 minutes of the end of a game, and it's 3 points or less, their net rating drops to 22nd. They become not pedestrian, they become poor. And so putting pressure on this team is what you have to do, and that happens now in Game 3. But I don't think the Heat did anything outside of just hit a lot of shots. Well, and Brett hit on this. There is a mental toughness aspect, and that's a great point. We talked about whether the Celtics might be tested in this game. Could the Heat make it close and see if Boston can do under pressure? Brad's right. It went the other way around, because it was the Heat having a historically ridiculously great shooting night. The kind of night where when you take 42 or 43 three-point shots and you make half of them, it was more than half of them, you have to win the game. And the fact the Celtics were within spitting distance and had a chance, and the Heat fended that off, we know the Heat have mental toughness. And so I think the big takeaway is the Heat were able to find a way to win a game that they should have won easily, but they're playing an outstanding team in Boston. That just speaks to how good Boston is. And now we see whether or not this win, and it could just be a statistical anomaly, whether it knocks Jason Tatum and that Celtics team off kilter a little bit. They're going to be tested now. It's going to feel different. It's not going to be easy. We'll get a make of how tough the Celtics are. I think that's a big part of the recipe for Game 3.
Well, the other thing is, let's not forget that the Miami Heat are doing this without Jimmy Butler. All 5 starters scored in double figures. So let's flip it around, Brad, and talk about the Celtics. Who needs to play tougher? Who needs to get better? How do they turn this thing around with the pressure now directly on them?
I don't think there's anything to turn around. I really don't. Tonight, they got beat. Miami shot the ball out of the gym, okay? Are they going to do that again? I don't know. But I didn't see much from Boston that told me that they weren't getting quality shots. They were being forced into paint basketball by the Miami Heat. That's a concerted effort by probably the best coach in the NBA to push them off the three-point line. They more than doubled up Miami in the paint, but that's by design. Miami knows, any underdog knows, the formula is to win the math game, and Miami did that by design. They executed. I don't think Boston did a whole lot wrong in this game. I really don't. I think that there is a real pressure factor now in terms of execution on the court. Don't know that they're going to change anything. Don't think they need to. They're going to see some zone. Joe Mazzulla was ready for that in game one. They did a lot of stuff with Jason Tatum in the corner, drawing two down and throwing those skip passes to get Sam Hauser going. They have a threat in the middle of the floor in Kristaps Porzingis. They can combat the zone. They have all kinds of weapons. That's not the problem. To me, this is a psychological series now. Bill touched on this. He wrote on this. I think his story came out today or yesterday perhaps, but it was